Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Westgate's First Friday's Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much for showing up today. It's a beautiful day. Thank God it's not raining. And again, we pray for the Hurricane Matthew citizens down in Florida who's going through it right now, and everybody that's been affected in the Caribbean and South Carolina and up the coast. So with that, you know, we have a very jam-packed schedule for you today. We have things that are very important coming up on the election day that we need to address. So we are very fortunate to have experts on the meal tax to share with us some information and help us be educated when we hit the polls on November 8th. After that, we're gonna be really lucky to hear from the horse's mouth of getting a peek in the crystal ball of what's coming up in Loudoun County from Rick Morris. He's the Business Development Director, so we get to hear all about that. So with that, I do want to introduce you to our broker and owner, Vin Nguyen, to share a few words with you. And then one group I didn't get to mention who's here with us today as well is Wells Fargo. Chung, Sarah, and I forgot the others, but we get to meet them later. But thank you so much for sponsoring today's program. So hang on tight.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for participating in this morning's meeting. Welcome to our monthly First Friday of the Month meeting. And for those of you who are not familiar with what we do, every month we have a meeting like this to help the agents, the real estate professionals to build their market knowledge. And from time to time we invite different officials from different jurisdictions to come in to share with us the developments, what's relevant in the county. And we have other topics that are relevant to the agents and to help them to build their market and skills. So without, I would like to thank Supervisor Pat Herrity, Rick from Loudoun County, and Phil from also Fairfax County, come and participate with us this morning and share with us their thinking and knowledge. I would like to also thank you, Wells Fargo, for sponsoring our lunch today. And we hope to see you. We hope you learned a lot from today's meeting, and see you again. Hope you enjoyed the meeting. Thank you.
So first off, we're going to go over the meals tax, the pro, why we should have it. And with us today, we have Philip Najilski-Eichner, who's going to talk to us about that. Phil has a 37-year career, a professional career, split between the corporate and public sector. He has worked for the U.S. Department of Energy and the National Nuclear Security Administration, and he concluded his federal service at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission as the Chief of Staff to the Chairman. He is president and founder of the Government Dynamics. He works often, involves complex public policy issues at the nexus among science, technology, and engineering, particularly in the context of U.S. energy and national security postures. Phil has been a Fairfax County resident since 1988 and is committed to serving his community. He was twice elected to the Fairfax County School Board, for whom he served as board chairman and as the chairman of its budget committee. He has also served on the Park Authority and Environmental Quality Advisory Boards, and he recently served as the chairman of the Use of Force Subcommittee of the Ad Hoc Police Practices Review Commission. And today he's going to share with us why we should have the meal tax. So welcome, Phil.
Well, good morning, all. Good morning. Thank you for having this discussion. It's a critical one for our county, and I think particularly of interest, should be of particular interest to the realtor community. And Ava, thank you for your introduction. I'm a businessman, as was noted, and here in Fairfax, and a volunteer in support of the meals tax. I represent a coalition of thousands of homeowners parents, teachers, firefighters, police, friends and users of our libraries and our parks and recreation facilities, and those who belong to churches and nonprofit organizations working to ensure that Fairfax also protects those in need. I want to speak first to the benefits of the meals tax. There are 6 great things that will happen if Fairfax votes yes on the meals tax. First, a 4% tax on prepared meals will generate $100 million for schools, county services. Significantly, $28 million of this $100 million, almost a third, will be paid by tourists and visitors to Fairfax. Second, 70% of these revenues will be directed to public education to help the schools stem the loss of their best teachers and strengthen the classrooms, such as by reducing class size. In short, to maintain the excellence of our school system. Third, we will keep our community safe and vibrant. In essence, we will protect our quality of life by addressing unmet police and firefighter needs and those of our libraries and parks. Fourth, we will be able to reduce some of the backlog in county and school facilities and infrastructure maintenance needs, like school renewals, while also preserving our AAA bond rating. Fifth, we will diversify our tax base and, important to this community, relieve property tax pressure on homeowners. And finally, we will do this by paying pennies on the dollar when we eat out. Let me share with you 3 facts about our relations with the state of Virginia. First, the Virginia General Assembly controls the revenue options offered to the county, and a tax on prepared meals is the only option available to Fairfax County for diversifying our operating revenue. Second, the state is pushing more of the cost of K-12 education back to localities. The shortfall in state funding for K-12 education has climbed to more than $1 billion annually since 2009. And finally, the reliability of already allocated state support is now in question. The governor just advised the state legislature that the Commonwealth may experience as much as a $1.5 billion shortfall in its 2-year budget. So in summary, relative to the state controls our revenue options and is scaling back its support for our local and school needs. And bottom line, it's more and more on us, the residents of Fairfax, to protect the quality of our schools and our quality of life. In relation to maintaining a high-quality school system and a vibrant quality of life, the county took a direct hit from the Great Recession, and our federal contractor community suffered substantial impacts from federal budget sequestration. As members of this community, the realtor community, know this better than any of us. Over a 6-year period, Fairfax residents suffered reductions in force, record foreclosure rates, and a precipitous drop in home values. And economic recovery has been slow. While home values have grown, vacancies in commercial office buildings are at a 25-year high, which means that revenue from commercial property tax is slow to rebound from recession-era levels. The consequence of reduced support from the state, combined with lower revenues from commercial property, is that 65% of county revenue required to pay for the schools and county services is borne by the homeowners, the Fairfax homeowners. This growing reliance on homeowners for county and school operating revenues is not sustainable. Without a more diverse revenue base, we risk school system excellence, and we risk the ability to continue to deliver the caliber of county services that underpin our quality of life. In an article earlier this year, the Washington Post characterized this reality as Fairfax fraying around the edges. I heard, just an anecdote, I heard one of your realtor colleagues report that she asked her granddaughter who her 2 favorite teachers were, and after naming them, her mother reported that both had taken positions in Arlington Public Schools for this school year. The Park Authority reports that the importance of Fairfax residents' place on high-quality parks, trails, recreation facilities, and services has increased to 93% of Fairfax residents, up from 80% in pre-recession 2007. Yet the Park Authority also reports that it has a significant backlog of critical capital improvement requirements. We have all come across the evidence of this backlog, such as cracked tennis courts and damaged park trails. So in summary, the double whammy of the Great Recession, combined with the impact of sequestration on our businesses, hit Fairfax County hard, and we are still recovering. And homeowners are carrying a growing share of the burden for protecting our schools and our quality of life. Now, our meals tax opponents tell us that it is unfair to target a single industry, as if the county has a personal agenda against those who own restaurants. But the simple truth is, this is not about them, it is actually about all of us. A meals tax will be a pennies on the dollar consumption tax collected by the restaurants and grocery stores on the county's behalf, in other words, a pass-through. And by the way, the administrative costs will be reimbursed to the restaurants and the grocery stores. Fairfax has many small mom-and-pop restaurants that bring a richness to our quality of life here. We should treasure them. Those who oppose the meals tax want us to believe that these restaurants will be harmed by instituting a sales tax, a meals tax, which is a sales tax. In fact, we could find no evidence to justify this claim. We could find no evidence to justify this claim. The only study that opponents could identify with their $1 million campaign is a student thesis built on the results of an email-based survey of faculty and staff of Kentucky universities, which had a 21% response rate. Even the author acknowledges that the survey results were not representative of Kentucky demographics. Yet, even with its flaws, the best the study could conclude is that there would be a very small drop in restaurant demand if a meals tax were imposed. Look, few of us choose to eat out or even decide we can't afford to eat out based on whether or not we will pay a pennies on the dollar tax on a meal. Further, we know intuitively that few of our fellow residents with high, middle, and low income will make a decision to leave Fairfax County to buy a prepared meal simply to avoid paying a tax. The Washington Post, in its editorial in support of the meals tax, goes so far as to declare these arguments to be phony. The Post goes on to note that the meals tax revenues have steadily risen since Arlington instituted a meals tax in 1991. My wife and I recently celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary at a high-priced restaurant in Vienna. The Vienna meals tax was not on our radar, and for a costly meal, we paid the equivalent of a Starbucks latte to the town of Vienna. Finally, I want to talk for a moment about the tax on prepared meals as regressive and the concerns of the disproportionate impact on middle and lower income families and on seniors with fixed income. Lower income individuals and families have to spend most of their income on basic necessities, including food. They also, by necessity, eat meals prepared at home more than any other income group. The important distinction here is the degree to which one chooses prepared meals, considers prepared meals outside the home to be a necessity or an individual's choice or discretion. In contrast to a decision about eating out or not, there is no discretion involved in paying property tax. We all know this. Whether one owns a home or rents one way or another, the impact of the property tax increase would be felt by senior citizens and middle and lower income groups. In this very real sense, having the ability to lessen reliance on property tax for maintaining county services can actually be a net benefit to seniors on fixed incomes and middle and lower income members of our community. So in closing, the meals tax referendum is, faced with all the realities I've described about our economy, the structural revenue problems confronting the county and school systems, and the declining state support, faced with these realities, this is actually more a referendum on the excellence in education we want to sustain throughout our school system and the quality of life and services we treasure and want to maintain, and the home values that we want to continue to rise. A local meals tax is the only avenue the General Assembly delegates to Fairfax County to accomplish these goals, and while also diversifying our tax base and providing relief to our homeowners. If you agree that it is important to keep the best teachers in the classroom, reduce class sizes, continue to protect our safety and maintain our quality of life, and finally, if you believe we need to be less dependent on homeowners to pay for all of the above, then it is clear that you should vote in support of the meals tax. It is literally a pennies on the dollar solution. I ask you to please support the meals tax with your friends, clients, and colleagues, and also to be sure to vote yes for the tax. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Open for questions. Thank you, Phil. So we'll hold the questions until Supervisor Pat Herrity gets a chance to present his side. So our next speaker, he is Pat Herrity. He's from the Springfield District of Fairfax County, and some of you may find his name is so familiar because we know his father, Jack Herrity, who was the former supervisor of Fairfax County as well. Also, Pat is very near and dear to my heart. I was reading your biography, and you're a fellow Hokie.
Yep.
So very special there. He graduated from Virginia Tech back in 1982 with an accounting degree. He's currently the chief financial officer of Delex, and he has over 30 years of experience in leadership positions for a number of fast-growing small to mid-sized government contractors. He's very active in the community. He participates in coaching youth sports and swimming. Kate, I know. Talk to Pat. Soccer, basketball, rugby, and hockey. He also serves in leadership positions of several other civic association business organizations, including the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce and the Northern Virginia Technology Council. And he's a huge proponent. As you heard, DC has one of the worst traffic. Well, he's the one who's helping us fix that. So he's been assigned by former Governor McDonnell to sit on that task force, and he knows everything about what's going on in Northern Virginia about transportation. So we have an expert here. But today, he will talk to us about the meal tax. So.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I don't have a long speech prepared to give, but let me talk about a few things with the meals tax. This isn't about our school system versus white tablecloth restaurants. I mean, we need to keep our school system strong. It's the number one reason people locate here. It's the number one reason businesses locate here. It's the number one thing we need to fight to keep an advantage on this guy right here from Loudoun County. Because he's going to tell you his schools are great. You should come to Loudoun County. Yeah, he is going to say that. But, you know, and you mentioned my dad. I grew up around the kitchen table where, you know, the mantra was always, our teachers had to be the highest paid in the region, because if you want the best teachers, you got to pay them the best. And I agree with that, and that's something I've advocated for since I've been in office. But, you know, this tax, this isn't a white tablecloth restaurant tax. This is a tax on prepared foods. It is a food tax. You go into the grocery store and you get a rotisserie chicken, you get the pint of potato salad, anything that's prepared, whether you buy it from the grocery store, whether you buy it from the 7-Eleven, whether you buy it from the coffee shop, it is a 10% tax. It's 4% on top of the 6% sales tax, which equals 10%, which I think is too much. And you know, I'm happy Phil can go to a nice white tablecloth restaurant and afford his lattes, but a lot of our working, single moms, our elderly on fixed income, they don't have the choice. Many of them don't have time to cook. They need to buy prepared foods. We've got a whole culture growing up that needs to buy prepared foods. The Washington Post in their endorsement said that the tax was regressive. I don't know if I agree with the Washington Post, but in this case, I do agree with the Post. It is a regressive tax. And it does hurt our low-income working moms and elderly. It's a tax that targets a single industry. Profit margins in the restaurant industry are 3%. We all know how quickly they fail. So you've got a 3% profit margin on average in a restaurant, and we want to add a 4% tax? I don't think so. And he talks about there's no study to prove the impact on restaurant. I've talked to enough restaurant owners. I understand the impact on restaurants. 3% profit margin doesn't allow you to run around and pay for a lot of fancy studies to prove that there's an impact on you. I know the school system has enough extra money, they can go hire George Mason to hire a consultant to find out what impact the the school system has on our economy, but I don't think the restaurant industry's got that kind of spare change sitting around. It's an industry that the board actually honored beginning of this year for everything that they do in our community. Restaurants, how many of you been to a booster club event or a community event that a restaurant wasn't actively involved in giving giveaways or contributing to? I know Greavy's, for instance, they write a huge check to the Public Schools Foundation. So even with the small profit margins, they're big contributors in our community. What this really gets down to, and I'll throw you one other point because I'm a CPA and an accountant, but you know, the property tax is a deductible tax, which means you only pay about 60% of it, depending on what your tax rate is. Meals tax is not a deductible tax, so you get no benefit whatsoever from that. What this really comes down to, though, to me, is you've got to figure out for yourselves whether we got a spending problem or whether we have a revenue problem. If you think we don't have enough revenue, and they should spend, we need more revenue than you should vote for the tax. I think we have a spending problem. I think our spending is out of control and unfocused in Fairfax County. You know, I look to the last board meeting. Just as an example, at the last board meeting, we, instead of carrying $5 million forward to this year to give tax relief to people, we ended up setting up an economic something reserve that had no criteria, had no identified projects, but we certainly didn't want to carry it forward to handle our budget deficit for next year. We decided we needed to spend it and put it aside so we could spend it later. So we did that. We also, how many are familiar with the Southeast Quadrant and Avalon Bay project? You guys followed that at all? Anyway, so down at Bailey's Crossroads, we had Avalon Bay was going to come in and do a development down at Bailey's Crossroads. Something I voted against. We were going to buy a building for $6.3 million. It was assessed at about half of that a year ago. Values of buildings have gone way up, haven't they, in the last year? So we were going to pay twice assessed value and then spend another $1 million to tear it down to build part of a road. We're not buying the rest of the right of way. We haven't studied the road. So that's one board meeting, that's $12 million that I think just didn't make any sense. How many of you all can retire at age 55? With a pension? With a pension?
No,
right. No? No? Realtors can't retire at age? Okay. So if you start, and not every, and Phil will come up here in a minute and talk about this, but not every county employee starts their career right out of college. But if you start right out of college, you can retire from Fairfax County at age 55 with a full pension, but it doesn't stop there. You also get county funded, or county paid, I should say, Social Security supplement. So we actually give you your full pension, like everybody else in the state gets, but we give you a benefit that nobody else gives you. It's Social Security payments from 55 till you get to Social Security age. So, and Social Security, you get a 0% increase, you get a 3% increase. We need to start addressing our spending problems. How many of you are familiar with fringe benefit rates? Somebody show me a hand. You know what fringe benefits are? What do your benefits cost for every dollar of labor? The private sector, I don't know what they are for realtors, but I would expect, because most of your independent contractors are pretty low, but in general, industry is about 30%. The county's between 30 and 80%. I'm sorry, 60 and 80%. It's double. We need to start addressing these long-term spending problems, and I've been trying to do it since I've been on the board. So this tax is just $100 million on top of another of the $100 million that we put in place earlier this year. And it's on top of a 25% increase in property taxes for the last 5 years. And that 25% increase in property taxes is driving people to Loudoun County. Because you do have a choice on property taxes. You can leave and go to another county. And I don't want our tax-paying residents to leave. I don't want our elderly to have to leave. I don't want I don't want our population sliding west to Loudoun. Sorry about that.
So I get to do the counterpoint now, right?
Well, afterwards. You can do the counterpoint afterwards. I won't be here for that, but I'm going to make sure Fairfax County comes in and straightens these guys out after you leave. Advocates will make it sound like every jurisdiction in Northern Virginia has a meals tax. Only 21% of the population in Northern Virginia lives in jurisdictions that have a meals tax. It's really Alexandria, Arlington, and the cities and towns in Fairfax County. It is a small percentage, so it is not everybody. The last point I want to leave you with is, the board is going to decide in April when we do budget how much money goes to schools. This 70 million will go to schools, but whether we give schools, the $2 billion that we gave them last year, or whether we give them 1.9 billion, or whether we give them 2.3 billion next year, all will happen in the budget process next year. So this isn't additional money that's going to schools. This money will go to schools, and then the county board in April will decide how much more goes to schools. It's a decision we make every year. Let me see if I missed any points, and then I'm going to get on to questions, because the real answer here is to address spending to grow our commercial tax base. We need strong schools to do that. We need to get our spending under control to do that, so we're not taxing people out of the county. And I think this is bad for Fairfax. I think it's bad for the 40,000 people that work in this industry. And I think we should go to the polls and defeat it on November 8th, and be happy to answer your questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pat. So now we're going to have you and Phil to come back up, and we'll open the floor up for questions. And I ask that whoever's asking, can you stand up and speak loudly, since there's a large crowd and it's a big room. So who would like to go first?
Oh, we got a shy.
Yeah, very shy. Kate.
Hi. I just have two kind of factual questions. One is, I have heard that the occupancy tax is actually under local control, and you said only the meals tax is the only alternative for raising revenue at the local level. And the second is of the kind of $30 million that's supposed to go to the county instead of to the school system. I understand that it's flexible. A portion is designated for property tax relief. Is that true? And if so, can you explain that?
You said that you wanted to answer on the, because you said that meals tax was the only one under local control.
Well, the occupancy tax.
I didn't say that.
No, I had heard that other.
No, the occupancy tax is capped at 2% by the state. We are taxing the hotels and motels at 2%. So there's no room for them to pursue the revenue from that source.
And
then
your
what's the
second half was the question was
The kind of
the other 30%,
roughly
the 30%, yeah.
split, and part of it is designated for property tax.
Yeah, we're going to decide in April at the budget process what the property taxes are going to be, and that's going to depend on everything. It always is dependent on. It's going to depend on our revenues coming in. It depends on what kinds of reductions we make and identify. It's going to depend on whether we address our pension issues, and a whole bunch of other things that we've got a long way to get to. But there is no property tax relief built into this. If we wanted property tax relief, that $5 million that we decided to put in this reserve, we have no criteria or no idea what we're going to spend it on, we would have put that forward to property tax relief. I don't believe this board is interested in property tax relief.
And again, can one of you gentlemen go over what exactly is the meal tax? I think at first, I know when I first heard about it, I was thinking more about the restaurant, but you brought up today more about prepared meals. So it could be a rotisserie chicken, it could be your local banh mi, or whichever. So it's not only the pho shop. So do you want to clarify or?
Yeah, the easiest way it's described is me, and I love using the bag of potato chips example, but if you go into a store and buy a bag of potato chips, it's not subject to a meals, at the grocery store, it's not subject to a meals tax. But if they open it up and pour it on your plate and give it to you, then it is subject to a meals tax. Your potato salad, if you buy it out of the frozen counter, it's not subject to meals tax. If it's the deli kind where they scoop it into the container and put a lid on it, then that is considered a prepared tax. So if it's factory sealed, basically, it's not subject to a meals tax. If it's not factory sealed, then it is subject to a meals tax. So that means you pay 10% on each of those items, and it doesn't matter where you buy it. If you buy it at the grocery store, if you buy it at the 7-Eleven, the deli, your local restaurant, that's the way it goes. I guess Coke's the same thing. If they unscrew the top and hand it to you, then it's 10%. If they leave the top on, it's 6%.
Okay.
And so the potato salad, let's say you pay $2.99 for a pint of potato salad that you put into a dish, put a cap on it, and went to the cashier. You pay 12 cents for that potato salad, in addition to the cost of the meal itself. To put it in perspective, this is essentially a consumption tax. We pay for the cost of consuming these specialized goods, the meals, prepared meals, and the cost of that is passed through the restaurants. The restaurants don't add it to the price of their meal. It comes out after you have identified the total cost of your meal, and it's a percentage of the total cost of your meal. So for my meal in Vienna, which was an anniversary meal, I paid for less than $4.20, I think. So that's kind of putting this in perspective. The benefits that we realize in relation to those additional costs, well, let me just say two other data points just to put this in perspective. Our analysis of Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers tell us that for the lowest income individuals who do buy prepared meals, we're talking about $51 per year additional cost to them. It's about $1 a week. For the highest end, those who are the most wealthy in our community, they pay $242 per year. That's to put this in some perspective as well. But the benefits to be realized are substantial. Why are teachers leaving Fairfax to go to Arlington? Why are they leaving Fairfax to go to Loudoun? Because our salaries are not competitive with those jurisdictions. Out of 10 jurisdictions in the region, and you can find this online, we are the next step above PG County in Maryland in terms of compensation we pay our teachers. We cannot maintain a quality school system doing the quality of education that we're doing, 188,000 students, very diverse student body, 65,000 of our students are in poverty. We cannot do it and not be able to rely upon high quality, the best teachers possible.
I'm going to defer here in a second, but I talk to our principals a lot, and our principals are having a hard time hiring the new teachers coming in, and we've got some vacancies in Fairfax County. It's a problem that we need to fix. We give the school system millions of dollars annually. In addition, every year, they need to focus those resources in the classrooms on the teachers instead of administration. And they'll give you all kinds of statistics about administration and how they've cut administration. What they've done is moved it to the school system, and they've got teachers that are doing nothing but administration. They never step foot in a classroom. But on the salary side, we're offering teachers a benefit that's 6 cents on a dollar, the Social Security supplement, that none of the surrounding school jurisdictions offer. I agree we need to pay our teachers more. I said that at the beginning, but why are we paying them 6% that doesn't mean anything to them when they get hired? I mean, you talk to one of the new teachers coming out of college and you tell them they're going to get a benefit when they're 55. You know, kids these days, that doesn't give them any value. They're worried about paying off their school loans. They're worried about paying mortgages. They're worried about paying rents. But the school system so far has refused to take that 6 cents on a dollar and put it into teacher salary. And we need to start doing that. Until we say no on the revenue side, you're not going to get that. And I defer to Jim. I mean, you're a restaurant owner. You know what the impact of your restaurant's going to be, and it's going to be significant. We'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Do you agree with that have an impact on your restaurant?
No, he's not the restaurant. He's
That's
Loudon.
Jim. That's
He's
Loudon. Jim.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah. Any comment?
Yeah.
on that?
My name is Jim Wordsworth, and I have JR Stockyards Inn in Tyson's Corner for 43 years, trying to learn how to do this restaurant business. I'm really passionate about this. I've been a citizen of the county for 47 years. I love this county. And I think we've hired about 4,700, I think, young people mostly, and people for second jobs and, entry-level jobs and that kind of thing. And this is, and it really discourages me because I love this county, I love everything about it, the way this is being presented. And I think it's being presented in a kind of an off-the-mark way. The meals tax, a 4% meals tax, and it is not a meals tax, it is a food tax. So, Phil, I agree with you on a number of points that you made there. The anniversary dinner it's an anniversary is once a year, but you don't every day have an anniversary dinner. It's the cumulative that kills you. The potato salad, the tax on the potato salad doesn't kill you. It don't hurt anybody. But it's a year of eating from restaurants and Starbucks and the essential things. They're not luxuries, they are essential in today's lifestyle with two working heads of households. And so it's not a luxury tax. National Restaurant Association says that 3% is what restaurants net, and that's a fact. 3%, you have to be a fool to go into the restaurant business, I believe, and I'm probably a number one at that. It takes 30 years to get your money back. That's why restaurants fail. In 2015, I'm a board member of National Represent Virginia since 1992 on the board. More restaurants failed in 2015 that opened in the first time in recorded industry history. First time. Phil, you're absolutely right on the sequestration. Everything you said about it is correct. And it goes further to an economic dampening to the businesses. It hurts Fairfax County in tax collection, but it's hurt us who are the taxpayers. Now, we've seen a recession in our business income since that period of time. I do 400, 500 company events a year, company picnics and company gatherings and that kind of thing. I know this industry, and it's been hurt. It's been hurt significantly, and that hurt us, and we are the employers. So when you come into my restaurant or you go to a catering, you can't refuse to pay the food and the food and beverage bill. You can't refuse to pay the tax. That's the next line. But what you can do is reduce the next line, which is the gratuity. And that's the payment to the people that serve you. And they live on a gratuity. The revenue, the wage rate to a waiter or waitress is $2.13 an hour. Their money comes just like you. And what your wage rate is and your commission on a sale. They live on these commissions. And the natural thing to do is to reduce gratuity. University of Kentucky in the year 2005 did an economic study that's available online that shows that a price increase reduces sales or reduces frequency of visits. That's a fact. So a 4% increase in the cost of the meal, and it's not a tax on me. It is not a restaurant tax. It goes straight through to the consumer, to my customer. Now, the tax...
you always...
Can I finish?
Yes, because I would like to have the opportunity to respond to the points you're making.
If I can finish, right?
Sure.
The 4% tax goes straight to the consumer, and we do get some money for the processing of the fee, but not for changing all the cash registers. Because when you go to 7-Eleven and you buy a soda from a fountain machine, that is taxable. With the meals tax added to 10% tax rather than 6. If you buy a Coke out of the counter with the top on it, that's 6. So the cashiers have to decide whether the tax applies or the tax not applies. But it's a big thing to the consumers over the period of a year to have to pay that tax. And
about $51 for the lowest income, about $240 for the highest income. That's the kind of tax we're talking about.
I confess I don't know what that number is.
And there's also, I referenced earlier, you referenced the Kentucky study. The Kentucky study found, even as flawless as that study is, it identified a very small drop in restaurant demand. We reached out to the expert, national expert on services that are provided by waiters and waiters, or the wait staff. His statement to us, he agreed that we could state it, There are no credible studies indicating that a tax has a negative impact on server tips. This is Professor William Michael Lynn. He goes on to say, I doubt there would be a negative effect, and I think it's possible that there would be a positive effect to the extent that patrons tip on the post-tax amount. So then there's this question of benefits versus cost. There is no question that a tax is a tax. None of us wants to pay more. The question is what we get for in return for that tax. And when it comes to sustaining the quality of life that we're used to in Fairfax, want to maintain in Fairfax, when it comes to high-quality school system, and when it comes to reducing the pressure on the homeowner and the property tax that the homeowner has to pay, even the commercial, reducing the pressure on commercial businesses, the meals taxes is simply a no-brainer, to be candid.
You know, if I could, just almost.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, 10 seconds.
Yeah. Our time is.
The way you present the tax is a diverse tax base. I'm a homeowner as well. So I paid the increase last year, and I also eat out in Fairfax County. I'm going to pay that as well. So it's not diverse to me. It is a trend. This tax is a transference of wealth from your pocket and the pocket of people who visit and eat in Fairfax County to the county government. And what really upsets me is the school board spending money like $1 million to change the name of Jeb Stuart High School just because one student got a petition that says it offends somebody. And that $1 million is a lot of daggone money to be spent for that kind of thing. The school board got a $79 million task force recommendation to cut taxes. I think it was around $79 billion. And to my estimation, not one of those things was made in deference to get more money in a $70 million meals tax. You can't do that. You can't have an employee keep spending money and you keep paying them. They got to stop.
Right. Thank you so much, Jim. And again, those are some good closing remarks, so I'm going to give Pat a chance to close up as well.
And I know you got to get on with your program, and this has been a lot of back and forth. Did you have a question? Yeah. I'm sorry.
Just like the gentleman here said, like the Fairfax County, just like one complaint, and then you spend $1 million to change the name of the school. And then I also noticed that like this one, this mailing was sent it to every household in the Fairfax County, and then you spend like I think about like $400,000, and then it's just like one-sided. You don't talk about the other side. You only talk about like advocate for the vote for the meal tax, and I think that it's unfair, and I think it's outrageous for the Fairfax County board to use like county resident money to pay for all those things. And then I also noticed that like every time you want to raise tax, you mentioned about education, and I know that like I think like the county budget is like about $7.4 billion, and then half of it is already given to the education. And then I know that right now is like each student, the expense for each student is like $13,000 per student, but it's just like the money was throwing everywhere, but it's just we don't get the result. So basically, it's just like raising tax is not the answer, because you keep on raising tax because right this year, the beginning of this year, you already raised like the resident property tax, and now you want to raise more tax. But then the one that affected most is like the poor people like us. We have to go to the grocery every time we have to buy something. We have to pay 4% on top of the 6%, and then it just, you're talking about release the property tax and all that stuff, but it's just like you already increased our property tax this year, and then you want more tax with the meal tax. You're going to add up another almost like 100 million.
So,
this
Kelly,
is-
I'm
So
gonna
it's not
make
effective.
I'm going to make
It's
a
just like
note to Kelly
raising tax is not a problem.
and to Jane.
It's not a solution here.
Our campaign manager, who's a volunteer, and Kelly, who's a volunteer, I'm going to make a note that let's make sure next time we have individuals in the audience who are prepared to provide the most negative response.
It's not negative,
Now,
so it's the facts.
It is the county's obligation to mail information out to every household about the referendum. That's a legal obligation the county has. it spent $90,000 for that mailing. It's expensive, but it's an obligation that they had to fulfill. The $400,000 figure is clearly erroneous. It's misinformation. We don't know where it's coming from. We think it's from those who are opposed to the campaign, but it's $90,000 to fulfill a mandated obligation. And it's your judgment as to whether it flows either way, pro or con. It's factual information.
If you
Okay,
use
I'm gonna try to wrap up.
If you use taxpayer dollar, then you have to have both
Yep.
sides.
It has both.
It's only
It has
one
not-
side,
It has
sir.
no side. It's factually
only one
presented.
Well, let me wrap up, and I hate to end on a negative note, but I'm going to end up on a negative note. You know, when we were first having a budget committee discussion on what language we were going to use on the ballot, you know, it was one of the supervisors that said, we just got to use the language that will get it passed. And that's where the schools all came in. They wanted to put the language in there that would get it passed, because they want their $100 million so they can spend their $100 million. That pamphlet that was mailed out at everybody's expense, I tried to get 3 or 4 changes put. I voted against the language that's in there because I don't think it does present both sides. It tells you all the jurisdictions that have a meals tax, but they wouldn't list the ones that don't. They wouldn't list that this is an additional tax on top of the 6% tax. There were 3 or 4 other things, and I forget what they were, that I tried to get into there. We did a joint statement yesterday, or the chairman did a joint statement with the school board yesterday. Again,